All right, well, welcome to this webinar. This webinar is called the 7 Steps to Launch Your Coaching Program, and it's really designed for people who haven't yet launched a program at all. So if you're a brand new coach and you have a book or you have a concept that you want to turn into some kind of coaching program, even if you want to just launch one-on-one private coaching, that's fine too. Or maybe you've started coaching and are you not able to hear me? Okay, can if you guys can hear me okay, I was just told that there might be a big echo. If you can hear me clear, can you type in clear? And if you have an echo, then let me know that there's an echo. Okay, I'm getting most people saying that it's clear. Okay, cool. Thanks. It might just be a single person's connection. So if you have already started coaching and maybe you've launched a program or so, this could just be your next coaching launch. And basically what I want to share with you on this webinar are the steps that I go through and the steps that I think everybody should be going through if you're going to launch something properly. And here's one of the things that I was irritated by, as Diane mentioned earlier in the little chat session. Some of you might have got the email from me that said I was a little angry, and I used a different word in my subject line. And what I was really plugging into today is, as I was thinking about this webinar, is that there's just a lot of, and I'm going to try to say this without being like super judgmental, and I know it's going to come off judgmental, and that's fine because that's the place that I was in, and still am honestly a little bit. But what happens in the coaching market? See, the coaching market in some ways, and I don't mean to try to bash the same market that I've basically dedicated my life to. So first of all, understand that I'm a coaching geek. I think coaching is something that every single person on the planet needs. I think it's, one of the most noble things that you can do when you step forward and say, I want to help you improve some area of your life. I want to use something that I've learned in my life, all the lessons that I've learned through my adversity in order to help you lose weight or to help you as a company deal with your transition or to help you with your language or to help you whatever. So I love coaching. I love every ounce of it. I love the concept of it. I've been in the coaching market for over 10 years, and it's the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done. And I think that most people who become coaches are world changers and transformational agents. So let me get that out. And in many ways, the coaching market is dirty. And the reason I think the coaching market is dirty, and I'm not going to try to throw anybody under the bus, and I'm not necessarily angry at any particular people, but what I see is that a lot of people struggle in building a coaching market or in building a coaching business rather in this market for many reasons. And one of the reasons that a lot of people struggle is because there's so much magic bullet type of marketing out there. There's so much, you know, stuff that people are putting out there that says like this is the one way to launch your program. This is the formula. This is the one size fits all approach. And the reason they do it is because that's what people buy. So I'm not pointing the fingers at the marketers. The marketers are smart because the marketers market what people buy. And part of the responsibility of this is that we as a society are looking for the one size fits all approach. We have such a microwave mentality perspective, and we want what we want now. We don't want to put any effort into it. We don't want to go through the hard work. We don't want to do any of that stuff that takes time. We just want the quick fix. Let me find the turnkey solution. And so what's happening is because that's what a lot of people are looking for, that's what a lot of people are giving. And the reality is, in my opinion, that's all BS. There's no such thing as one way to do anything in the coaching market, especially because we're talking about you helping another human being. And if you're helping human beings do things, whatever those things are, if you're helping people do things, there's so much variation in the individual people who are going to be buying your program, attending your seminars, coaching with you one-on-one, whatever that looks like. There's so much variation in the individual person that there's no way that we could come up with one thing that works across the board. And there's so much variation with each of us individually. So what works for me as a coach in my market, even if you're speaking to the same market, won't necessarily work for you as a coach because you might have different strengths than I do. You might have different weaknesses. You might have a different style, different personalities, different abilities that fundamentally changes the way that you have to launch, right? So there's no such thing as this magic bullet, right? Or the pill or the secret sauce. Yet that's what most people are searching for. And that's a society problem, right? That's why so many people are looking for ways to lose weight without having to change their diet or exercising, right? And so many people are falling for this, these systems, these formulas, these turnkey solutions of all you have to do is plug in a few details and all of a sudden, boom, you now have a full coaching practice, right? And it's not true. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of the content that is taught out there is false and it doesn't work. A lot of it absolutely works, but it doesn't work for everybody. That's the thing that I want you to understand. And some of the things that I will teach you that I've done won't necessarily work for you either. So you've got to think for yourself. You've got to be independent. You've got to look at everything through the lens of your unique reality. And please don't search for the one way to do Facebook ads or the one way to build your social media following or the one way to build a coaching business or to launch a product or the one way to do anything. Anytime you see there's a one way to do anything and human beings are involved, then I suggest you run. So I just want to get that out of the way. Obviously, I'm going to teach you 7 steps, but within these 7 steps, there's a lot of variation, right? So that's what had me irritated today as I was just thinking about this webinar. And one of the things that I'll get into a little bit later is that a lot of the people who are teaching how to market are marketers, and they're teaching how to market to other marketers. And if you're not marketing a how to market program, then their system might not work for you because you're changing everything. If you change the product, if you change the way people consume anything, if you change any variable in the system, the entire thing might change. And I'll say the same thing the opposite way as well. If you're following somebody like me who launches in a market where I'm selling personal coaching or I'm selling group coaching and you're selling marketing, then what works for me in my coaching market might not work for you in your marketing market, right? So you just have to understand, be aware enough and be intelligent enough to know that one small variable change could shift everything. So my intention is to really teach you how to think. I want to teach you the concepts. I'm not going to teach you the put your blinders on and just follow this process without making any changes kind of system, because I think all of those systems are crap. And if they do work for people, it's accidentally, or they work for people who are identically like the person teaching the system, right? So hopefully I'm not coming off as like, some guy with a big chip on his shoulder, although maybe I am, I don't know. I'm just calling it the way I see it in the coaching market. So let's get into my passion around helping people launch your next program, whatever that is, whether it's your first one or your next one. And the reality is, you can absolutely create a powerful launch. You can create a successful coaching business. I'm not a big fan of putting targets on there, like you have to have a 6-figure business or you have to have a 7-figure business, as far as that being the standard of success. You get to choose what your standard of success is. You might want a 5-figure business, a 4-figure business, a 6, 7, 8-figure business, whatever it is that you want is possible out there if you do it the right way. And the bottom line in this industry, which is what I love about it, is that you can do all of it while helping people improve their lives. And you can improve your life and you can live more fulfilled and you can help other people live more fulfilled. So that's what's so fantastic about, this particular industry. And if you have that kind of heart for helping people, then I honor you and I acknowledge you for that. So the problem is that there's a lot of watchers in the industry. And again, that's not unique to coaching. That's just personal development and personal behavior in general. It's human psychology. But the bottom line is, most of us have seen somebody speak about something or publish a book or launch a program or something, and we're like, man, I should have done that. Or I thought of this concept, 7 years ago, or I've been wanting to write this book 10 years ago, or whatever the case is. And time goes by quickly when you're not acting on your dreams, basically, right? And so each and every one of us, we can take all those ideas that are on the shelf and we can get them in play as long as we take action. I mean, there's really no difference between fundamental difference between the people who are making their dreams come true in in the coaching industry and that have fantastically successful coaching businesses and you. There's no difference, or me. The difference is some people just take action and some people don't, right? And obviously we can't think our way into success. We can't ever, think our way into the achievement of anything significant, right? So I want to start out by just spending a few minutes on that piece because this is the biggest reason why most businesses fail, why most coaches don't ever get their business off the ground, why most people don't lose weight, why most marriages are unhappy. I mean, it's like it's the reason why most humans don't have what they want, right? The reason that most humans don't have what they want is simply fear. And obviously that's a very wide ranging word. It encompasses a lot. In the coaching industry, there's the fear of failure, there's the fear of rejection, there's the fear of running out of money, there's the fear of judgment. There are all kinds of fears that come into play. But if you don't really handle this, then it doesn't matter what kind of marketing brilliance you have or what kind of systems you learn or what kind of people you hire. It doesn't matter if you have the systems, but you don't have the willingness to take action, right? Because ultimately, you are your business, right? If you're a majority decision maker in your business, then your business is going to fail or succeed based on you. So systems are fantastic and systems are important, but systems are not what's going to make somebody succeed or fail. And if you are willing and you're determined enough and you're convicted enough, you can learn how to do anything. Any how-to information can easily be found on the internet, but the willingness to face your fears and the willingness to move through whatever sabotaging patterns and habits you have, that's going to be the real determining factor over whether you succeed or not, right? So no matter where you are, no matter what you teach, no matter who you're going after, you've got to handle that internal game. Now, specifically with coaches, I want to dive into a handful of specific reasons why people don't take action and why people don't succeed if they do take a little bit of action. And the first one, these aren't ranked in any order, but the first one is the employee mindset. Most of us, at some point in time, were an employee. And then we decided that we wanted to become an entrepreneur. Maybe some of you were entrepreneurs from the very get-go and you never had a job, or you never had a job long enough to become an employee, to have the employee mindset. But most people at some point in time had the employee mindset. And you cannot build a business with an employee mindset. The employee mindset thinks about trading dollars for hours, right? And so you think every hour that you put in, you should be making $20 an hour, $40 an hour, $100 an hour, whatever it is. And the employee mindset is also averse to risk, right? When you're an employee, the company has the risk. There's no risk that you might, fall off the treadmill, so to speak, and forget to market or sell or make a mistake at a strategic level, and then it's all going to come crashing down. There's no risk like that as an employee. Now, of course, if the business folds, then you lose your job as an employee. So obviously there's always risk of that, but employees don't think that way. Employees come in, they do their job, they get paid, and that's pretty much it. And there's not a whole lot of connection to the mission. There's not a whole lot of responsibility. There's not a whole lot of control. And you can't operate a business with that employee mindset. I mean, a business requires risk. A business requires investment of time, of energy, of money. A business requires things that need you. Let me say that again. For you to build a business, what's required is you have an entrepreneur mindset and not an employee mindset. Another thing that I've noticed that people really resist, and this has come up for me several times in my career, is that we don't like starting over again. So if you've been successful in a certain career and then you come over to coaching and it feels like you're starting over from square one, People don't like that. The ego takes a big hit if you feel like you're a beginner again, right? So you've got to make sure that you can manage that, or set your business up in a way, or set up your support team, or hire a coach, or whatever you have to do to make sure that that doesn't shut you down, right? The third thing is a lack of certainty. Now, this is a big umbrella, right? There's all kinds of things that you can be uncertain about, but what I specifically want to talk about is your energy. There's a certainty in somebody's energy that's magnetic and causes people, somebody who's successful, that causes people to want more. But if you don't have certainty in your energy, then you're actually going to repel people. And if you start your business, you try to launch your program or launch a website or something like that, and you're not certain in your energy, people are not going to follow you. They're not going to be engaged. They're not going to be attracted, and they're not going to hire you, or they're not going to buy your program, or very few people will. And that could be very damaging to you. And that could actually lead to more uncertainty, right? So your energy is critical. And I'm going to get into that in the first step, how to get more certainty in your energy. The fourth thing that I've seen is the need to be right. Now, again, this is a human condition. It's not just unique to coaching, but the need to be right with how you put up your website, or what ad campaign you run, or how to do social media, right? If you're looking for the right way to do it, what you'll notice is that there are hundreds of quote unquote right ways to do things. There are hundreds of ways that are the only way to do things if you listen to the marketing, right? The reality is, as I was saying earlier on my soapbox, that there's no real such thing as the right way to do it. You just got to get in motion, get feedback, and see what works for you. So don't need to know the right answer before you get in motion. And then a little bit more of a personal resistance for most people is the need to be ready. You will not be ready to the point that will make your conscious intellectual mind satisfied before you take action. In fact, if you're waiting before you're ready to do anything, then you'll probably not ever do anything, especially in this business. So you've just got to get in motion. And the reality is, you're ready enough to take the first step. You might not be ready to build the way you want to build, and achieve your 5-year goal first time out of the gate, but you're ready to take the first step. And obviously, you can't get to the second step without taking the first step. And then finally, the burden of responsibility really gets a lot of people. The responsibility of, as I was saying earlier, the responsibility of needing to keep the business going, right? If you're a business owner, especially when you're the only one in business, you're doing everything. You're doing the sales and the marketing and the websites and the customer service. And it's easy to let a lot of those balls drop because you're focusing on a single thing at a time. And that's not easy for some people to handle. Or maybe it's the responsibility of hiring a team, and the responsibility of motivating people, or managing others, or whatever the case is. A lot of people really don't want more responsibility in their life. And so that's an inherent reason to not take action for a lot of people. So Lizandra says, I had to let go of the need to be right and just jump out and try something. Absolutely. You're so right about that. This next slide, I'm going to go quickly through this. I think most of you are in the right place if you've been attracted to, our emails and you registered for the webinar anyway. But just to put a little clarity on this, if you have an idea and you have never really implemented it, or you've got a next idea that you want to make better than the first launch or whatever, and you know that you need some accountability or a kick in the pants, with love to get to work, then that's perfect. You're in the right place for that. If you know you want to take your business to the next level, if you're serious about success and you're willing to do what it takes to build a sustainable business that's lucrative, that's credible, that's, solid foundationally, and you're an action taker, right? You can't just be an information seeker. You're never going to collect information and get to your dreams, right? You got to take action. You're in the wrong place if you're operating on that microwave mentality and you want a one size fits all, or you're not ready to step forward, right? You're looking for the quick fix, or you're looking for somebody to sugarcoat anything. That's not me. And if you're not willing to invest time or energy or money You can't build a business without investing money. You can't build a business without investing a lot of energy, and you can't build a business without investing a lot of time. Now, some of you might want to really leverage your time and leverage your energy and leverage your money, and that's fine, but you can't be averse to, you can't resist investing, high amounts, especially in the beginning. And you just can't, be a tire kicker and build a successful business, right? Unless that's what you want. Right? I mean, again, you get to decide what your level of success is. But what I find most people trying to do is they're trying to find the most amount of return with the least amount of effort. And especially in the beginning of everything, it's going to be the opposite. You're going to put more effort into whatever you're doing, you're going to get less return. But the more you stay in it, the deeper you dig, then the returns are going to start to get exponential, right? So you have to have the right kind of mindset. So before I go any further, I want to tell you just a little bit about me. Some of you know a lot about me and some of you don't. My name is Sean Smith. I don't even know if I said that. That's a picture of me and my family up there in the right-hand corner. When I started my coaching business, I struggled for the first few months, and then I found some things that really worked. And then I got aggressive with live events. I started to do a lot more on the internet. And in the last 10 months of those first 18 months, we did pretty well. We did over $250,000 in those last 10 months. And so in the first 18 months of my coaching business, we did pretty well in the coaching industry, and we made over $302,000 in business. And I've been fortunate to, achieve and experience a lot of really cool things. I was named North America's Next Greatest Speaker in a speaking competition. I've done tours in India and Costa Rica and Greece, and a lot of really, really cool things. However, it's not it hasn't always been easy. Let's just put it that way. It hasn't always been fantastic. And I'm the kind of guy that knows that you're going to learn more from my mistakes than my successes. And so I'm always going to highlight what didn't work for me, right? And I'll be the first to tell you that I ended up filing bankruptcy a few years into the business because of the mistakes that I made. And we made hundreds of thousands of dollars of those mistakes, right? 3 years in, after doing over $300,000, I made some critical marketing mistakes, and the business couldn't take it, and we just started to implode. And we went from 300,000 to 200,000 to 140,000, and we just couldn't handle it. And so we ended up filing bankruptcy. But it caused me to really heal a lot of things personally for myself. One being my relationship with money and my relationship with the business. And it caused me to understand the value of a dollar. It caused me to really focus more on what I need to do to build a business and not just generate income. So I learned more in those 2 years falling down that hill that I climbed up in the first 18 months than I have in any other period of my business. And my hope and my wish is that I can help you and many other people avoid those mistakes. So you don't have to file bankruptcy. So you don't have to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes and so forth. So, I'm pretty transparent with numbers. I don't share any of these numbers with you to try to impress you. I just share numbers transparently because when I was learning my business and learning marketing and just learning the ropes, I would learn a bunch of concepts and then I would try them out and I would realize that it like I didn't know the whole story. And yeah, I can go make $25,000 in a weekend, but if I'm spending $20,000 to make $25,000, well, that's a $5,000 weekend. That's not a $25,000 weekend, right? And so there was just a lot of concepts that I learned the hard way. And I felt, with some of them, like maybe people weren't telling me the truth, or some of them I just wasn't looking for the truth. But that's just my style. So I share with you these numbers just out of transparency, not to try to impress you in any way. And so eventually, we righted the ship, and we've done, over $3 million. I think it's over $3 million now, or quite nearly $3 million total in business. And I've just, lived an amazing 10 years with the freedom that I've had and the trips that we've taken and the time that I've been able to watch my kids grow up, etc. Recently, I've done a little bit more on TV, and I've appeared on a bunch of TV shows, and that was a lot of fun. So this business can provide a great platform for you to speak your truth, for you to help a lot of people, for you to, get exposure if that's important for you to make a lot of money if that's important for you. It provides an opportunity for you to really fulfill your mission and your purpose on this planet. And my mission is to live my life with people who are passionate about success. Many of you know I'm a personal development geek. I love studying this stuff. I love talking about it. I love teaching about it. And I've developed a new passion, or a passion rather, around helping new coaches avoid these mistakes to get their message out into the world and help you, just play a bigger game, right? Because some of these mistakes you won't be able to recover from. And many of you know the story. I won't tell the story just because of the time that I don't have right now, or I don't want to spend right now. But my dad's final words to me were, "Be who you can be, do what you can do, and live a good life." And so that has become sort of my mantra, and I think that's the essence of success in any realm. So before I get to the 7 steps, I want to tell you a little bit more about the truth about a few things. Number one, the truth about marketing. Marketing, as I was saying earlier, it's a concept, right? It's a vehicle. It's not a one size fits all anything. And it's a necessary component, obviously, to any business. And marketing has to be done not only properly, but in the proper order. And what a lot of people do is they market too soon, before they have certainty, before they know who they're marketing to. And, they just don't have enough of the foundation right. And if you market out of order, it's dangerous. It could be dangerous to your finances. You could lose a lot of money. It could be dangerous to your emotions. You could lose a lot of confidence. It could be dangerous to your brand. You could really damage your reputation by going out there. Yet that's what most people are looking for, right? They're looking for marketing tips before they're even ready to market, right? So marketing is something that is conceptual. I want you to understand how to think like a marketer, not just how to blindly follow what other people are doing. And as I was saying earlier, marketers who teach other marketers how to market and they can just continue that cycle, that's fantastic. If you're going to teach marketers how to market, then you can follow those kinds of marketers' programs. But if you're a life coach, you're not necessarily going to be able to teach, or follow rather, a system that somebody else uses to sell marketing products on the internet, about how to market your marketing products on the internet. It's just fundamentally different. So you have to understand that there's so much flexibility and so much variation in marketing, because I think it's a misunderstood concept, and that's a problem. The truth about sales. If you're in business, you have to sell. Now, most coaches don't want to sell. They don't like selling. Selling actually feels yucky for most people, right? And to be honest, sometimes it rubs me the wrong way. It rubs me the wrong way if I see somebody and it feels slimy, or if I feel like I'm doing something that might be felt, that might be perceived as being slimy. So it's like this constant thing that I think coaches uniquely, not that anybody else doesn't have this issue, but coaches specifically really struggle with the concept of sales. And because of that, they don't do it very often. And I know makes total intellectual sense, but most people aren't aware of how little time they're actually spending selling, right? If you spend 5% of your time selling, then you're going to get dismal results, because you're only spending 5% of your time selling. Now, you don't necessarily have to be the one doing the selling, but you have to have a system of sales. And the bottom line is, and this is very simple, this concept, the more that you have a person or a system selling, the more money you'll make. And the more money you'll make, the more cash flow your business has. And even if you just want to change the world like I do, and like most of us do, your business needs cash. It's the lifeblood, right? It's literally like the blood flowing through the veins and the arteries of your business. And so you have to heal your relationship. If you have a negative energy around sales, you cannot build a business. It's just that simple. There are very few black and white concepts, in my opinion. That's one of them. You either have to heal your relationship with sales, or you have to stop trying to build a business. And what I find is that so many coaches are swimming upstream because they're trying to do what they want to do. They're bleeding hearts like I am. Hey, I'm a bleeding heart as well. We just want to save the world. We want to help people, but you can't do it and try to avoid all of the things that don't feel good if some of the things that don't feel good are sales and marketing, right? So you've really got to channel your passion for whatever you're doing and realize that the offers that you make, the invitations that you make, the sales that you make are required for you to do your work. And the more that it falls under the umbrella of your passion, the easier it's going to be for you. So that's the energetic thing. But on a tactical level, the more you sell, the better your business is going to be. It's just as simple as that. And so, most people want some kind of ongoing sales process. We call that evergreen or automated. And obviously that's, a great way to leverage your time and have 24-hour sales going. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But you've got to get clear if there's a resistance that you have to sales. The next one is coaching. And specifically, I want to talk about the coaching market. I already spoke a little bit about this at the beginning of the webinar when I hopped on my soapbox and talked about how the market is dirty sometimes. And coaches are just the fabulous, fantastic people that want to help. But a lot of times coaches show up with so much passive energy that it's actually repelling, right? We repel the people that we're trying to help when we show up with that kind of just wet energy, right? It's deflating a lot of times. And so there's two fundamentally different pieces of creating a coaching business. One of them is the coaching skill set itself, and then the other one is the business stuff that I was just talking about with sales and marketing. And here's the reality. You better be a good coach. You better be good at what you do. If you're not good at what you do, then you're going to have a product that will constantly be difficult to sell. And you got to have people that can tell others, Coach Lizandra's fantastic at what she does, or Diane is amazing at what she does. She helped me do this, this, and that. And so there's this skill set piece that a lot of people are just jumping over. And I think number one, it's irresponsible. Number two, it's almost fraudulent to try to stand in front of somebody and tell them that you can help change their life in some foundational way if you can't. And if you don't believe that you can, then your energy will always be negative around that, right? So I think there are too many people in the coaching world. And again, this is going to sound super judgmental, and who cares? There's a lot of people in the coaching world that haven't put enough time in being a good coach, whether that means getting certified or studying their market or learning, as somewhat of an apprentice, with somebody else that's doing what they want to do. You've got to get good at what you want to do. Otherwise, you can't create anything significantly successful, right? So don't just try to jump into the marketing. And I say that for you. Don't just try to jump into the marketing. Get confident and certain in your coaching ability and what you can deliver. Now, specifically, the content of this webinar is around launches. The truth about launches is that, again, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. There are so many variations in a launch, and every single launch that you ever do better be different than the one you did before, because if it's the exact same, that means you're not paying attention to your market, right? You're not paying attention to people as they evolve. Even if you do a launch 2 months later, you better check in and check the pulse of who it is that you're serving and make sure that you're keeping up to date. There are so many mistakes that are made in every launch. There's a lot of misunderstandings in a launch. There's a lot of people flat out lying about launches, right? And again, I don't mean to, to sound like I'm trying to throw a bunch of people under the bus, but I was really irritated when I learned the truth about a lot of quote unquote, successful launches, right? Because a lot of times what you don't know is that some of the launches that claim to do $100,000, $200,000, $1 million, $5 million, or whatever, they're talking about gross revenue. A lot of times you don't know how much money went into that money, that, making the revenue. And a lot of times you don't know how many people refund. And I know that sometimes it's as much as 30, 40. I've heard it be as much as 50%. So somebody says, "Yeah, I did a $100,000 launch." Well, that's fantastic until half of them refund, and now your $100,000 launch that cost 60 grand to do now only brought in $50,000, and yet we're still going to talk about doing a $100,000 launch. Like what I said in my email today is you know what? I don't like lying. I don't like I want transparency, right? So anyway, I'm going off a little bit, but I want you to understand the truth about what you're going into, because I don't want you to have any false expectations and then be disappointed, right? So there's all kinds, and I'm going to dive specifically into launches more. So I'll go further into that. And then finally, success. Success is a moving target. It's defined differently by different people. Success is all about making forward progress and momentum. And we have to manage our own relationship to success, right? We have to be a cheerleader on some level. We have to be our own encourager. We beat ourselves up so much. And what I found is that it doesn't matter who we are, what kind of success we've had, in the corporate world or in the sports world or in the business world, we still have to manage our own relationship with ourself, right? So in this world, in this society, in today's age, you have to be authentic. You have to be you. You have to have integrity, in my opinion. Now, if you don't agree with that, then that's great. But that's the way for you to love what you do and really be able to stand with integrity and with pride behind your work. And it requires you to stay authentic in order to do that. So I'm going to dive deeper into the launch program here, into these 7 steps for the launch program. And before we even get to step number 1, you've got to have what I'm calling the pre-launch step, and which is, I already talked about this just a little bit. You got to get going, right? You have to get in motion, and you've got to create the right kind of target with any sort of goal, right? But you certainly have to get off your butt, or as somebody I know says, get off your assets and get moving. There's no substitute for action. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And success loves speed. Money loves speed. The faster you do anything, the faster you get feedback, the faster you can course correct, and the faster you can learn, and the faster you can succeed, right? So make that commitment to yourself that you're not going to stand around watching other people or just thinking too much about whatever it is that you have ideas around, and you're going to keep that commitment. Because I don't want you to be that person. This was my biggest fear when I was almost killed when I was 13 years old. I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't look back on my life with regret over what I could have accomplished. I made a promise to myself that I would live a life of whatever it takes, right? That I would go after every goal that I have, that I wouldn't settle for mediocrity. Now, just making that promise to myself wasn't enough, because I then lived the majority of the next 20 years, not achieving my goals, and on a deeper level, unsatisfied and unfulfilled. But most of us make some kind of progress or promise rather like that to ourselves, but we just don't keep it. And a function of that, or a result of that rather, is that at some point in time we look back and go, wow, what if we would have done that? And I just knew when I was 13 years old, that would be the most painful question I asked myself is what could I have become had I stayed committed, or had I not fallen into these traps, or had I really stayed disciplined on what I want to do? So when you have that level of commitment, that level of conviction, and this is really just personal development 101, it has nothing to do with business acumen. It has nothing to do with launch tactics. It has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with you managing your own patterns and behaviors and you being willing to go after it, right? But when you have that level of commitment, you have that conviction, then you can figure it out. All the how-to stuff is much easier to do, especially when you have clarity. So my invitation to you is to focus on what's that one thing that you've always wanted to do and haven't, or what's that one next thing that you want to focus on. You know, regardless of where you are in your business, you got to have focus on a single purpose going forward, whatever your next step is. It doesn't help you to prepare for step number 20 if you're on step number 1 right now. That'll usually just add more overwhelm and complication to the process. If you're at step number 1, let's get to step number 2. Now, that doesn't mean do it careless and don't plan for the future. That's not what I'm saying. But don't focus on all that stuff. Focus on what your very next step is when it comes to taking action. So specifically now, let's get into these steps for a launch. And again, the premise is you are launching a brand new coaching program that you've never launched before, or you're relatively new as a coach. Maybe you've tried to launch some programs before. Maybe you've had a little bit of success, but you want your next one to be much bigger. The first thing I want you to ask yourself is, what's your personal story? Most people just get into the launch, as I was saying about marketing, too early without going back and doing a little bit of foundational digging. What is your personal story? Not what is your product and how can we leverage it, or what should I price it at, or how should I launch it? No. The very first thing is, who am I? What's my story? And let's look at your core identity, your core self, that childlike curiosity you have. What are your core dreams? What are your passions? My experience is when you go internal and dive into who you actually are as a person, then you can come out with more conviction. You can come out with more passion. You can come out with that authentic drive and that fuel that's going to attract people. But unless you go internal, unless you dig down a little bit, you're really not going to be able to launch anything fantastic. The analogy that I'm getting right now in my head is, imagine you have a spring coil, right? If you don't do anything with that spring coil and you just like take your fingers off, it's not going anywhere. But if you wrap your fingers around the edge of the coil and you squeeze it so that it starts to build up a little of that energy, right? You squeeze it toward you, then you can remove your fingers and it can shoot out, you know, or pulling back a bow in a bow and arrow, right? Or pulling back the arrow in a bow and arrow. It's the same kind of concept. We have to build up a little bit of momentum, and it's the same thing with the launch. You've got to go internal a little bit so that you can get ready and create the certainty for your launch to be successful. And one of the things that I want you to do is clarify, why are you a badass? You know, you have a genius inside of you. You have brilliance. Now, usually we don't play off that because we take our own genius for granted because it's easy for us. But the same thing that's easy for you is something that a lot of other people would pay any amount of money for because they can't do it. So don't mistake the fact that something is easy for you with how valuable it can be in the marketplace, right? So we've got to get clarity on that. And what's your purpose for not just this launch, but in general, your market, building a business, what's your purpose on this planet? And all of that becomes this magnet that will start to attract people. And then once you have, clarity and you've done some of that energetic work, now we've got to look at your mindset. You have to have the right goals for your launch. You have to understand that this is step number 1. If you have a do or die mentality in any launch, you're probably doomed to fail from the get-go. I want you, if this is your very first launch, I want you to understand that this is launch 1 of 20. This isn't launch. This isn't the whole game. You're not going to win or lose, succeed or fail on this launch. This is just the first step in a very, very long-term mentality, right? In a long path. I want you to focus long-term, and that'll help you remove a lot of the desperation and a lot of the negative energy that most people have when they put all of their eggs into their launch bucket or their launch basket, right? And we also need to look at what your expectations are. What's the definition of success? Even, for some of you, you might want to make money, but for some of you, it's not about making money. It might be to build a list. It might be to get your name out there. It might be to actually just meet other people in the market that you want a strategic partnership with. There are many ways that a launch can be successful that don't have anything to do with money. Now, of course, as I said earlier, cash is the lifeblood of a business. So yeah, we want to set it up to make money as well. But the bigger your scope of success is, the broader your definition of success is, the easier it's going to be for you to do everything, and the easier it's going to be for you to feel good about your launch, right? So that's step one. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. As I said earlier, these are, all these steps have some variation in them, but that's the first component. Step number two is, you've probably heard me talk about who your seeker is. If you've listened to any of my webinars in the past, your seeker is the person, sometimes people will talk about it as your client, your ideal client, your target market. I like to refer to it as your seeker, meaning somebody out there right now is seeking the knowledge that you have. And instead of you energetically trying to chase them down, I would rather you get in front of them, because they're already looking. And that's the way to create a business that attracts people, rather than a business that feels like you're always trying to chase people down and you're shooting at them. You got to rope them like cattle, right? And then convince them that they need your product. That's how a lot of people do it. They build their own product before they know what people want, before they know sometimes who they're even selling it to. And then they really struggle with selling it because it was never established whether these people want it in the first place or where they are. And, if this is a pattern that they already have. So I would rather you get clarity on who is seeking you, not who you're seeking, but who's seeking you. And everything in your launch revolves around your seeker, because that person is the expert. Everything from this point forward, from a strategic standpoint, depends on your seeker. So if you jump out ahead and do anything that I'm about to say, or anything that you've learned before this step, you're going out of order. And the whole thing might fall down because you haven't spent enough time right here getting to know who your seeker is. It is so critically important, and most people just won't do it because they don't know how, or they don't know that it's so imperative that they understand who their seeker is, etc. And there's all kinds of things that you've got to learn about your seeker. Two of the main ones are what price point they purchase products at, and what's their pain point. And that's not in order of importance. Those are just thrown down there. Actually, I would say it the other way around. But what is it that what problem are they trying to solve, basically? And then from a pricing standpoint, what do they buy? A lot of coaches are concerned about pricing from their perspective. I'm doing a webinar, or not a webinar. I'm doing a coaching program, and I'm giving 10 hours of my time. What should I charge it? I don't know. 10 hours in some markets cost $49, and they won't pay a penny more. 10 hours in other markets cost $49,000, and they would gladly pay more, right? It depends. You can't look at the price from your perspective. You got to take a look at the price, again, from your seeker's perspective, right? And ultimately, here's the holy grail question. What would your seeker write a blank check for? When you figure out what your seeker will write a blank check for, then you can basically print gold. You can print money. You can now do anything you want in your business, because that's going to become the title of your programs. That's going to determine the copy that you write on your sales pages. That's going to tell you what videos you do, because now you know what this person ultimately wants so bad that he or she will write a blank check for it. That's your goal. Now, there are many different questions. This is just this little image on the screen here is just one little snapshot. We have 4 pages of questions that I teach of how to get really clear on who your seeker is and what they want. And the more you dive into it, the better you're gonna be, because the more knowledge you're gonna have about that person, right? So that's step 2. Get very clear on who is seeking you. Step number 3 is when we start to look at developing a product. Now, obviously, you need something to sell. A lot of people struggle with what to sell, or they struggle with what content to develop and how to structure it, etc. And one of the things that I've used for myself and some of my clients and I teach is called a content skeleton. And it's a way for you to basically just create almost like a tree of all of your content around, a certain seeker, right? So if you had this seeker, what would you teach them in order to get them from point A to point B? What would you teach them? And inside of each one of those high level concepts, what's the lower level concept? And each side of each one of those lower level concepts, what are the exercises you would teach and whatever. And when you go through the content skeleton, which usually takes, anywhere between an hour, 2 hours, then you literally have this library of content, and you could go into that content skeleton and film 100 different videos with the content that you just outlined, or do a 5-day seminar, or teach 10 minutes worth of your content. It becomes like an accordion where you can contract it down or you can expand it wide depending on how much time you have and depending on how deep you go. But if you do that content skeleton, then you'll never ever again have to wonder about what content you can give, or if somebody asks you what you teach, what you could speak on, or what have you. It's easy. You just go into your content skeleton, you just pull it right out. So that's what we would do to start, is brainstorm all of the content that you have, and then we decide what product you're actually going to create, right? And as I've been saying, it depends on who your seeker is. It depends on what their buying habits are. Don't try to sell, like a very famous marketing concept is, don't sell hospital beds to hotels. Hospital beds are fantastic. Hotels aren't interested because they don't buy hospital beds. So don't try to sell a webinar program to a market that doesn't understand what webinars are. They don't see any value. They don't buy them, right? So you've got to really focus on what your seeker wants, needs, and what they already buy. Now, unless there's a reason not to, generally my suggestion is that you start with an audio program, like a group coaching program that lasts 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that, because that's a relatively easy program to produce. It's easy to record. It's easy to then edit and have an audio product. So unless there's another reason, I would suggest that. But there are all kinds of factors to consider when it comes to what product you're going to do. How are you going to structure it? How are you going to title it, which is immensely important? What's the price? How are you going to deliver it? Is it going to be all online? Are you going to do live events with it? Is it just going to be a do-it-yourself, like a collection of archives? How are you going to brand it? How does it fit into your overall brand? How are you going to package it, promote it? Are you going to partner with other people? How are you going to sell it? Obviously, online sales pages, videos, one-on-one conversations over the phone. So there's all kinds of variables to consider, but all of those are dependent on the product you select according to who your seeker is and what they buy. So now we have a product identified, and maybe we've created it, or we know that we're going to create it after we sell it. Now the next step is to create a launch calendar. I've developed somewhat of a template just from doing, so many launches over the last, I'd say, 6 years. And for my launches, there are 6 main phases. And I would suggest, unless you have another reason to follow something different, I would suggest you just, follow this. The first phase is you plan the launch out. You get out your calendar, you plan out when you're going to do the videos or the webinars or whatever however you're going to deliver your content, and you work backwards. So if you want the program to start December 1st of this year, well, that means that you need to start selling it November 1st, let's say. And that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. It has to be a month out. It depends what kind of program you're selling, what kind of market you have, et cetera. But let's just pretend you got to sell it in November. You know that there's a launch cycle that's going to take 4 weeks, let's say. So that means you actually have to drop the first video in October. And in order to get the list ready, you've got to do some nurturing sequences, et cetera. So you plan it all backwards, and you realize this whole thing, start to finish, might be 5 months. It might be 6 months. And then you take a look at the holidays, make sure you're not doing anything right around Christmas or Thanksgiving or any other time that your seeker might not be available, etc. So you've got to really be strategic with the planning of the launch, and don't be careless with this. I've been careless in the past, started a launch, realized like 3 weeks in, it's Christmas, or people are now going to summer vacation, or there's this other thing that I didn't see because I didn't take the time to look at the calendar. So be very strategic with the planning of your launch. And then the next phase is to engage your audience. Now, there are many variations here. It depends on if you have a big community already or if you're building them from scratch. So I'm not going to dive into the details of this so much. Otherwise, that in itself could be a whole webinar. But you've got to engage the crowd. Sometimes that means planting seeds, letting them know that you're getting ready to teach content in a couple weeks and just warm them up. Or sometimes that means re-engage the crowd. We recently did a launch in a market that I hadn't been nurturing for a long, long time. And so we had to add on to the front of the launch an extended nurture period because I hadn't been in constant conversation with this market. And so I think it was at least 3 weeks. It might have even been a month and a half that we knew we had to warm them up and get them back into conversation before we even start trying to send them to our blog or get inside of a launch. So there's an engagement period that's important because you need people to pay attention when you start your launch process. And then the next phase is when you start delivering whatever content you're going to provide. So sometimes that's a webinar, sometimes that's videos or a video series, sometimes it's free reports, checklists, some kind of digital downloads. Sometimes it could even be live events like teleseminars or in-person events, but you're delivering now the education piece, right? So the beginning of any launch should involve you educating your market, your clientele. And that could be a couple weeks. It could be 4, 5, 6 weeks. It depends. I would say it's usually between, 2 and 4 weeks for most people. But as with everything, there's variation in this phase as well. After you've delivered your content, then you're going to start the selling. That's where you invite people to a sales page. You invite them to a phone call. You invite them to come to a live event. You invite them somewhere where they can purchase your product. Now, one of the mistakes that I made early on is I only had a couple doors open for people to purchase. And that was a huge mistake because some people are listening to your teleseminars, but they're not watching the webinar. And when they're listening to the teleseminar, they don't have a link to click on. And it's just really easy to lose a lot of people if you're not careful in this phase. You've got to open as many doors as you possibly can and get people on as many paths as you can possibly manage because people consume information differently and their cycles are different in terms of when they buy. You're going to have some people that take action right away. You're going to have some people that need to think about it and need to hear from you 3 or 4 or 5 different times before they decide yes, right? And so you've really got to plan out this invitation period strategically. There's got to be multiple doors for people to go through, multiple ways for them to consume the sale, right? To consume the pitch. It could be on a webinar, it could be on a phone call, it could be via email, it could be on a sales page, it could be in a video, it could be a recorded phone call. There's many, many ways, and you've just got to take all of those things into consideration. Now, I'm not saying you have to do all of them, but you have to do enough that you're going to reach as many people as possible. So that's the invitation phase, right? Where people are now buying your program. And sometimes that will last a week. Sometimes it'll last 2 months. Most of my launches have an invitation phase that's at least a month long. Now, that's a little bit against the grain of the way that most people do launches. And, I've just found that for my markets, that's what works better. And I sell more when my launch is longer and my invitation period is longer. Some people find the opposite. They actually sell more when they only give people, 7 days or 10 days or 14 days or something to make their choice. So again, we got to figure out what works best for you. Then after the invitation phase comes the follow-up and follow-through phase. This is where the majority of your sales will actually come from. And so many people don't pay attention to this, or they don't pay enough attention to this, right? So many people are focused. The ones that are excited about sales and they got the invitation phase down, they're so focused about the invitation phase, they don't put enough energy on the follow up or follow through phase, right? And you've got to nurture people who don't say yes right away and don't purchase right away. Those people have questions. Maybe that looks like you getting on a Q&A phone call with them as a group. Maybe it looks like you getting on the phone one-on-one with them. Maybe you send emails asking them if they have questions or answering some of the most common questions. But that follow-up and follow-through phase, if done correctly, will probably create, I would say, 50 to 75% of your sales. At least it does for me. So that is a critical piece that most people mess up. And finally, phase number 6 is upsell, downsell, side sell, and just all around nurturing of your community. And part of your community, the biggest part of your community, are the people that didn't buy your program. And most people, in my experience, forget about the people that didn't buy the program. And you've got buyers in there, they just didn't buy that program. You'd be surprised at how many people will say no to a $200 group coaching program and say yes to a $4,000 private coaching program because that's what they want. And if you're not nurturing them, you're not doing the follow through, you're not engaging them in the side sell, upsell, downsell, then you're going to miss out on a lot of that. So in my experience, in my estimation, I would say that most coaches specifically that do a launch probably leave, I would say, between 70 and 80% of their sales on the table because they miss those last two phases right there, the follow-up, follow-through, and the nurture sequence, right? And people don't want you to just try to sell them and then forget about them. So when you sell this program, when you close this launch, don't just leave those people in the dirt, right? Continue to send them blog posts, continue to send them other valuable content so that the next time you do a launch, they'll be even more receptive and attentive for you, okay? So that's step number 4. That's the launch calendar, setting it up to operate properly. Step number 5 is your marketing funnel. Now, as I was saying earlier, there's all kinds of variation with marketing, obviously. So I'm going to go pretty high level here. But some of the components of a marketing funnel are a CRM platform, which is a customer relationship management system. You might have heard of Infusionsoft or Entreport or One Shopping Cart, some of those kinds of programs. And that allows you to have lists of contacts. It allows you to tag certain people. It allows you to create forms and sequences and, you know, all the things that you need to do to nurture people. There are multiple pages, web pages that you need for a launch. You need an opt-in page. There's a sales page. There's a thank you page. There's an order page. And there's a product page if you're going to show, like, you know, what the product actually is. Oops. Hang on a sec. My system just stopped showing the slides. Okay, we're back. There is a payment processing platform that you need. You obviously have to take money somehow. You can set it up through PayPal if you want, or you can get a shopping cart. Some of your CRM platforms will have the ability to process payments. Some of them do not. You've obviously got to have an email system. You need invitation emails, follow-up emails, welcome emails for after people buy the product. And you need some kind of content delivery platform, right? If you're doing webinars, there are many different platforms to do webinars, YouTube for your videos, there are teleseminar systems, there's Google for Hangouts if you're going to use that, you know, WordPress blogs, social media. Obviously, there's hundreds of different social media platforms, and the big ones are Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, etc. So these are all the components that go into the back end of a launch. You know, this is what needs to be in place in order to build the system, to actually build the funnels, right? Once you have your funnel built, now we've got to look at how are you actually going to sell this program. And what I'm talking about is two things primarily: your language, but also your energy. And throughout this whole process, you've got to be influential, you've got to be authoritative, and you've got to be persuasive. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be slimy. It doesn't mean you have to be pushy. It doesn't mean you have to be a salesperson, like a used car salesperson, right? But if you're going to be a coach and you're going to teach people how to improve some area of their life, you better be credible and you better have authority. And if you're not influential and persuasive, then nobody's going to say yes to you. So this is not manipulation. It's clean, clear, authentic persuasion coming from a good place, right? And you also have to be okay if people say no to you. My intention, my energy, when I do a launch or when I do sales of any kind, is I try to persuade people to take action. If they don't take action with me, that's fine. But I want them to take action. I want them to get off their butt and do something, right? That's what I ultimately want. And I genuinely, and I know some people just say that, that's not lip service for me. I genuinely am not highly committed to them buying my program. And that just feels better for me because most people are not going to buy your program, right? You put 1,000 people into a launch funnel, most of them are not going to buy. 950, 980 of them are probably not going to buy. So you just have to be okay with that. But throughout that whole process, you've got to be authentically persuasive and authentically influential. And there's basically a formula for that, right? One of the things is you've got to be influential and persuasive in your strategy, just in setting up the entire launch. You've got to have consistency in your language. You've got to have consistency in the branding, consistency in the timelines, right? If you're going to send out 4 videos, don't send one of them 2 days later and one of them 9 days later. So that actually adds to authority when people feel consistency because they know that you're pacing them through a process. You've got to have credibility. There are ways to do that. You can show the things that you've done in your life. You can share success stories. You can show testimonials. There's an energy that you have that creates credibility. There's ways you set up your website that creates credibility. There's just different ways that you can talk to be more credible. And I don't want you to fake credibility. I just want you to be intentional about being credible if you are credible. And if you're not credible, then don't sell the thing that you're not credible about. The fourth one, integrity. I mean, I could jump on another soapbox here. Just do the right thing according to what's right for you, right? Don't do this to try to pull a bunch of money out of people's wallets. Do this coming from the right place and let them know. Let them see you. Let them see your humanity. When they see your humanity, they'll actually trust you more than when they understand how amazing you are and they learn about your accomplishments and your credentials, right? A fifth piece of influence, authority, and persuasion is distinction. A lot of times being different is better than being better. And you're not the only one selling the thing that you're trying to sell. And even if you really are the only one, most people will not see that you're actually the only one. So from your seeker's perspective, there are a lot of options that they have. And the human brain is actually biologically attracted to distinction. It's biologically attracted to something that it hasn't seen before, right? So you have to intentionally be distinct throughout this whole process. And then finally, I already touched on it a little bit with integrity. Just be you. Be authentically you, right? Do things the way you do things. As long as you're not sabotaging your success because you're not doing, the things that work from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective. Be you. Do you. People can tell when you're authentic and people can tell when you're fake. and you're just trying to string them along, right? And all of that leads to and builds into influence, and it builds into authority, and builds into persuasion. And I actually have a process that I teach called the 15 pillars of persuasion, and it's a template, and there's 15 components, and it's as close to a plug and play as you can get from a sequential standpoint, right? The first thing you say is this. The second thing you say is this. You talk about the problem. The third thing you say is what most people want in your market. The fourth thing you say is who you are. The fifth thing you say is this, right? So if any of you feel a little uncomfortable about sales, or you don't have a whole lot of experience of sales, and you haven't written a sales page before, or you've never done a sales pitch on video or on stage or whatever, that template will just give you what to say, because every single one of you can answer each one of those 15 components, and then you just say them. Like you just say them in order. So that's broader than the scope of this webinar and the time that we have, but it can be done. And I'll tell you, when I first sold something, it was awful. I was sweating, my armpits were gushing. I was so nervous. I was embarrassed. It was absolutely awful the very first time I tried to sell something. So this isn't anything that you can't learn. And the more you do it, obviously, the better you get. The more energetically clear and committed you are, then the better you're going to be each time you practice. But these are things that you can learn how to do, specifically with sales. The final thing in this launch system, these seven steps rather, is traffic. And if you notice, you have to build everything before you invite people in, right? And a lot of people are doing this in the wrong order. They're trying to get people on their websites, and they're trying to, engage their crowd before they're ready. They don't even have the funnels built for people to do anything, right? So the final piece, once the machine is built, so to speak, is traffic. Now you start putting people into the funnel. And I'm going to give you probably a 3-minute, if that long, training on traffic, because we just have to keep this super high level. It depends on your seeker, as I was saying earlier, as everything does. And we could dive into traffic for 5 days with each one of these pieces and not be done, right? So traffic is a big conversation, and that's why a lot of people actually get paid to manage traffic for other people, because it's not always easy, right? But basically, there are two forms of traffic. There's paid traffic, and there is free traffic or unpaid traffic, right? Paid traffic, you're looking at things like retargeting ads, Google banner ads, where you advertise on Google, all kinds of social media advertising. You can advertise on Facebook. You can advertise on many of the other different social media platforms, LinkedIn, etc. YouTube, you can do ads on videos. You can contribute articles to other people's communities or blogs, and some of those are paid. Sometimes you pay to get that exposure. You can do a paid email blast or a list blast, where you pay somebody X amount of money to send your email out to their crowd. And it looks like we've all probably gotten those emails. Hey, a buddy of mine is doing a webinar tomorrow night, and it's on this, and that, and you click the link, and now you've joined their list. A lot of times those are paid processes. That's a paid email. It doesn't always have to be, but sometimes they are paid. With free traffic, you can do that same kind of email, and sometimes it's just a swap, right? Let you send an email out to your people, I'll send an email out to my people. So you're not paying me to send an email out, and I'm not paying you. The exchange is in the favor, basically. So the same kind of email could be free traffic, or it could be paid traffic. And there's a whole world of partnership, right? Affiliate partners, JV partners, where you're sharing revenue. You're paying people X percentage if they help you sell a product. There's all kinds of variation in that, so I'm not going to do a training on that. There's social media organic reach, right? If you have 1,000 people on your fan page, or you have 2,000 Facebook friends, and you just do a post on Facebook, that's organic. You're not paying for that. It's an organic reach that you have. You can send people to your blog. You can SEO your website where people will hopefully find you in searches. You can do podcasts. You can do internet radio. You can do press releases. You can do TV shows. You can do media that doesn't require payment all the time. So there's all kinds of potential traffic. I'm not going to tell you which one you should do because that answer is it depends. Where's your seeker? What do they want to buy and how do they buy? If your seeker is not on YouTube, then don't spend any money doing YouTube ads. But if your seeker is on YouTube trying to find out how to make money on YouTube, then you should maybe spend all of your money on YouTube ads as you teach the YouTube consumer how to make money on YouTube, right? So it all depends. And it all takes strategy, obviously, but here's the general rule I want you to understand. The easier it is to do, the easier it is to ignore. If something is easy for you to do, most of the people aren't seeing it. I promise you that, right? It's the things that take more effort and a lot of times the things that take more investment of money that are going to get you better results. So don't try to launch your mission on this planet trying to do the cheapest thing possible. That's disrespectful to your mission. That's disrespectful to your program, to your purpose. That's disrespectful to your seeker, right? If you have $1 million dreams, don't go after them with nickel and dime effort. And it will take investment. And the more that you invest in time, energy, and money, generally, the more you're going to get out of it, right? So you just have to have that entrepreneurial mindset. Now, I was kicking around whether to do like a bonus step or step number 8. And what I want you to know is that throughout this entire process, there's a critical factor, and I call it your in-game adjustments. So during this whole process, you're going to have to be willing to pivot. You're going to have to be willing to apply high intention, low attachment, right? You have a high intention to engage the audience. You don't have an attachment that it has to be in video if they're not watching your videos. Maybe you do Facebook Live. Maybe you jump on a Hangout, right? You have to be willing to be flexible throughout the entire process. And you got to focus on two main things, the engagement level and feedback. A few years ago, I learned this when I did a video launch, a traditional video launch, and I noticed that only like 7 people had watched my 3rd video. And my sales pitch was on the 4th video. Now, if only 7 people watched the 3rd video, I probably won't get 7 to watch the 4th video. And if I get only 5 people to watch the 4th video, I'm lucky if I get one of them to buy. So then I realized I need to do something else. And instead of sending them to a video that was, that they could play whenever, I did a live webinar. And then I had a ton more engagement in my webinars than in my videos, which is just a replay, right? And then I realized, well, some people don't want to do webinars because they don't understand the technology or they're driving home from work or whatever. And so I decided to do a teleseminar, and then I judged the engagement around that, right? And then you're also looking at the feedback that people are giving you. Some people are going to have questions about your content. Some people are going to wonder, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And they'll ask you questions that you weren't planning on, right? And by staying connected to people and judging their content, you might have to be willing to do new content. I'm sorry, by judging their feedback, you might have to be willing to do new content. You might have to be willing to do a different platform like a webinar or a teleseminar, like I was saying. You might have to tweak the offer. You might realize that, wow, what these people really need is they need a group coaching program with support. So you might have to actually add things to your program or take things away or scratch what you were planning on doing and do something different because the market is calling for it. It's dangerous to decide how your launch is going to go and then never make any changes. That's what's dangerous. You might even need to go into different market avenues, like market to different people. You might have to market a whole different way. So the bottom line is you've got to be open to the changes that are necessary when you get into the launch. Now, I'm the kind of person that I don't do video number 2 until I'm done with video 1 and I find out if people liked it or not and I get feedback. Then I actually film video number 2. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that. I like to do it because it gives me more in the moment conversation with my seeker, right? Like, oh, you like this video and they're giving this feedback, and then I'm going to film a video and then give it to you tomorrow. And then I'm going to wait to see what you like about that video, and then I'm going to film the third video, right? Now, some people don't have the time to do that. Some people don't have the personality to do that, and that's fine. This is not something that I'm, suggesting that everybody do, but it's a possibility. And I've found that I love it when I'm actually doing things. It adds maybe a little bit more stress because now we're dealing with timelines more real time. We can't build the funnel out, 4 weeks in advance and get all the websites up and stuff and load the video content. Like, we can get a lot of the skeletons up. We can get the sites and the URLs, but we can't have the videos loaded, and we can't, actually have some of the content up because the content hasn't been created yet. But that's the way I do it, right? Part of that is just my personality, but part of it is because I like the interaction of with my seeker, right? So that's one thing that you can do. But if that's going to freak you out and it's going to shut you down, then don't do that. There are plenty of people who run successful launches, and they do all 4 videos on a single day, and they know how it's going to go, etc. But you got to really understand your market in order to do that, right? So that's the most critical factor that I found, is these in-game adjustments. Whew, man, there's a lot of content to digest. Hopefully you get a better idea of what it takes to get into all of this work around launching a program and a product. I'm positive that you're not going to be able to take what I did, what I taught you on this webinar, and just implement it step by step, because I didn't teach it that way, because that doesn't exist. In my experience, that way doesn't exist. But hopefully I've taught you how to think at each one of these steps, and I've taught you what some of the concepts are and some of the mistakes to avoid, etc., so that you can implement this in whatever your next launch is. And some of you are going to want more help. And so what I want to tell you about is a mastermind that I have coming up. It's actually starting on, it looks like September 9th. So it's coming up pretty soon, where I'm going to lock arms with a very small number of coaches and help them through this launch, pace them through all of these steps, with my help and with my marketing director's help, Ola, who's with me, hand in hand with everything that we do together. She's writing a lot of the emails. She is putting up websites. She's editing videos. I mean, she probably does more than I do when it comes to the execution of the launch. I mean, I do all the content and the videos and stuff like that, but she's doing so much behind the scenes work, and she's developing a lot of the strategy. She's creating titles and prices, and just a lot of the brainstorming. And so her and I are actually going to be teaching this mastermind together. So it's not just me that you get, it's me and my marketing director that you would get if you choose to participate in this mastermind. And the mastermind is going on for 5 months, right? Again, this is not a quick fix. I don't want to teach you how to get a webinar up and running in the next 28 days. Is that possible? Yes, but I'm afraid of skipping steps. I don't want to do that. I want to take our time. I want to do it the right way, not the fast way. And I want to do it foundationally. And I want you to learn as much as you possibly can during this process. So we've set it up to where there are 10 sessions every other week, and it's going to run all the way through the beginning of January or mid-January, right? So it's going to be 5 full months, basically, to build your launch. Now, if you want to go faster, you can. And if you don't necessarily need to launch or want to launch by that January date, that's fine too. So we're not going to drive, it's not going to be an assembly line where everybody's going to do the exact same thing on the exact same date necessarily. So you can go a little bit faster, you can take a little bit longer, but we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it the foundational way. And there's not going to be any more than 10 businesses, if even that many at most. And when I say 10 businesses, um, if you have a marketing director or you have a business partner or you just have somebody else that you want to go through the program with you so that they can get the information from us and you don't have to go back and regurgitate it all, then that's totally fine. So you can have like 2 or 3 people representing the same business, but there's basically only 10 slots for businesses, right? And that allows us to give our time and our energy and a little bit more attention to each business, right? And the content focus is pretty much everything that we've talked about in this webinar, but it's the implementation of that. And we're going to open up a lot of our records. We're going to break down the last 3 launches that we did. The last 3 launches that we did were 25,000, 60,000, and 120,000 plus. Each one of those are a little bit more. And we want to show you what we did wrong. We want to show you what we did really well. The $60,000 launch, actually all 3 of those, no, the $60,000 launch and the $120,000 launch were in the same market. The $25,000 launch was in a bigger market than the other 2, right? And so there's all kinds of mistakes that we made. And I want to just open the books and show you what we did. And there's a bunch of formulas that you need to look at. There's conversions, and we want to use these as somewhat like, a teaching point for you to learn from and for you to help decide whatever it is that you're going to do in your launch. There's going to be one-on-one support on the calls. It's not just only going to be me teaching a concept and then everybody goes off and implements it. It's going to be me and Ola giving our feedback, live on the calls. And so you might be getting coached or you might be hearing somebody else get coached, and it applies to you as well. So there's going to be a lot of one-on-one individual interaction within the group environment. And the value of the program, we put the value of the program easily at $9,000 plus. It's tough to actually put a tangible value on something like this. I mean, the way you got to look at it is, what if you did a launch and it generated $500 the first time, but the things that you learned, you implemented into launch number 2 when your community was a little bit bigger, and launch number 2 generated $2,000, and then launch number 3 generated $10,000, and then launch number 4 generated 25, right? And launches generally get exponential like that if you continue to build your audience, So that's the way I invite you to think about it, is what's the value of what you could create in your market and getting the book out of you or the coaching program out of you, or just getting in motion, right? What's the value of you, marketing and selling and starting to deliver your program, right? So the intentions of this mastermind, again, it's similar to the 7 steps that we went through. The intentions are for you to either create a signature product or program if you don't have it already, or to solidify one if you already have a product or program, or if you know that you have your signature product or program, then great. We'll just take a look at it, give any suggestions or feedback if we want, and if not, then you got that checked off the list. We're going to help you design and implement everything in the marketing campaign, set up the marketing funnels, identify whether you should do Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube or blog posts or whatever. We're basically, the way we're looking at it is we are going to coach you in terms of what we would do if we were you, right? Now, we don't know that anything that any of us come up with is going to be a slam dunk 100% success. You never know that. We're marketers, right? In marketing, you never know that. Every single launch I do, I've never done a launch where it worked out exactly the way I thought it was going to work out. The $120,000 launch actually doubled what I thought. Actually, it was more than that. It was more than double what I thought it was going to do. And then the $60,000 launch was about half of what I thought it was going to do, right? We're in the marketing game. We're dealing with people. We're dealing with moving targets, right? So we would never say, I'm positive what's going to work in your weight loss market. I don't know, but we'll do what we'll coach you, we'll advise you, we'll pace you through, we'll facilitate what we would do, and we'll help you make the in-game adjustments all along the way. And really, that's where the value of the mastermind is. And it's not just from Ola and I. It's the support that you get from other people, the ideas that you get from other people. You guys might be helping each other do launches. I mean, just imagine if you were in this mastermind group and you automatically had, 9 other promotional partners. Now, I'm not going to, on behalf of everybody else, promise that everybody's going to launch your program because it might not be a fit, but I'm sure you'll have at least a few. If nothing else, you're going to have encouragement. You're going to build your network. You're going to learn from what other people are doing, right? So you're going to be intimately connected to other people's launches as well. And you'll learn the behind the scenes from them as well as anything, that we're doing. And we will launch, I would say, at least 2 programs during that time. I actually hadn't thought of this, but we will launch at least 2 programs during that time, and we'll open up everything that we're doing to you guys too. So you could watch our launch from literally behind the scenes while we're launching it. And I'll tell you what I think is going to work and what's not going to work, and you'll see if it works or is not going to work. So we're going to take this, this intimate mastermind and really go deep with the people that are involved, right? Let me go back. I forgot. I didn't go through all these bullets. Anyway, I guess I'll go back afterwards. So the investment options of this program, as I said, I think it's well over $9,000, especially if you think of the long-term value of the lessons that you'll learn and the support that you'll have and the new ideas and perspectives, et cetera, over the long term. Now, my intention is that you make well more than that through your next launch, right? And I'm pretty sure that we can help you make more than $1,500 going over this, all these steps over the course of 5 months with our help. I'm not going to promise that because I don't know where you are. I don't know if you have 0 people in your tribe or you have 50,000. I don't know. So we will never promise outcome goals for people with variables that we don't control. But that's certainly my intention, is that this is a program that, that there's a high level of return on investment. So if you pay for it all in full, it's $14.97. We do have pay plans. We have 2 pay plans. One of them is $547 times 3. And if that's not enough of a break for you, then we even have a 5-month payment plan of $347 times 5. So if you see the value here, if this is something that would help you, then hopefully you see this as a no-brainer. And if so, then great, jump in. There is a full pay bonus as well. When you pay in full, we'll give you an additional 60 minutes on the line, just one-on-one with you and us, Ola and myself. Outside of the mastermind call, we'll give you an additional one-on-one session, and you can use that whenever you want. So maybe you want to do it right away out of the gate, or maybe you want to wait till after the mastermind is completed so you get everything as a group that you can, and then you help, you want us to help you with whatever the next step is, right? So you can use that however you want in the process. And if this is speaking to you, if this is something that you want to do, the website is elitecoachinguniversity.com/launch. elitecoachinguniversity.com/launch. So I'm excited about it. Let me go back to this slide that I didn't complete. I'm excited about it. We have a lot of other people. Oh, hang on a sec. Let me do that later. Let me give you the website here, just in case you want the website, because I'm going to leave this slide up. So the intentions, I'll put those back up in the website there, elitecoachinguniversity.com /launch. So the intentions: design your marketing campaign, your sales strategy, and remove whatever inner obstacles you may have. Now, in my other life, if you will, when I'm not, teaching coaches how to be a coach or teaching speakers how to develop their speaking business, I'm doing personal development coaching primarily. Actually, it's what I've done the majority of my career, is personal development coaching, which is helping people get around their fears, helping people remove their limiting beliefs, and helping people heal their relationship with sales and marketing, and all the things that I was talking about earlier. So the inner game obstacles are what's going to stop most people, and we'll handle those as well. We'll handle them as a group and or individually when they come up, right? So there's a lot of very powerful coaching techniques that I've learned, that I teach, that I train. And a lot of times, I would say pretty much all of us at some point in time, myself included, we need a good old scrubbing of the mindset, right? We need some help with the inner game blocks, the fears and the doubts and the worries and all that stuff. And that's why we have this support. I think what you'll find is the biggest value in a group like this is the support, because most of us don't like trying to go through something alone. And we never have the perspective on our own, obviously, as we can have with a bunch of other people. And so that's probably what you'll find if you choose to join us. You'll find that the value is in the support that you get from us, the private Facebook group that we'll create, and all of the interaction with us and everybody else in the group. So that's the program. What I really want you to focus on, actually, somebody was saying they're getting a 404 error. Okay, great, it works. Okay, cool. What I want you to focus on is this. Whether you choose to join this mastermind or not, that's up to you, obviously. But if you want to build a coaching business, you have to think like an entrepreneur, and you have to think in terms of investment. And instead of focusing on what might go wrong if I take action, which is what most people do, right? Most people think, what if I do this and it doesn't work? How much money will I waste? How much embarrassment might I have? Will this just be another thing that I've tried before, or another thing that I've tried to add to all the things that I've tried before that didn't work, right? Will I be wasting time or energy, or what if what if it's uncomfortable? Most people are hardwired, and then on top of that, programmed to where their default reaction to the opportunity to take action on anything is, what bad could come up? Or let me say that again. What's the negative possibilities of taking action? That's the way most people think. That's most people's default programming. Oh, there's an opportunity for me to take action. There's an opportunity for me to make money. What's the worst thing that can happen? But they think of it not in a positive way, like, oh, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll just go ahead and do it. They think literally, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then they make their decision based on the worst thing that could happen. And the worst thing is usually really negative, right? And so most people, if you think about this, most people are fundamentally programmed to not take action, because as soon as they have an opportunity to take action, they think, what could go wrong? What's the bad thing that could happen if I take action on this? And so they're fundamentally programmed to stay stuck where they are. If you have the mindset, if you always think, what's the bad thing that could happen if I take action, you will be more programmed to stay stuck. But successful people think, what if I don't take action? What's the bad thing that could happen if I don't take action? They think in terms of regret. They think in terms of if I don't try, then what will happen? That's the way successful people think. And successful people are more afraid of regret than they are of failure. Successful people are more afraid of regret than they are of rejection. Successful people are more afraid of not fulfilling their purpose than they are of losing money. Successful people think differently. And because of that, they act differently. And because of that, they achieve differently. But you have to take a look at the fundamental way that you approach opportunity, the fundamental way that you approach decisions. If you are programmed to think, I might take action, something bad's going to happen, then you'll never get your goals. You'll never achieve anything significant thinking that way. Now, I'm not trying to talk you into my program. If this isn't a fit for you, if you don't like my energy, if you don't think it's the right time for you, then please, don't join the program. And for some of you, maybe this is the very thing that you needed to hear in order to change your mindset around money, or in order to change your mindset around taking chances and taking risks in life in general, not just in your business. But you can't think like an employee and be afraid of risk and build a business like an entrepreneur and create freedom. Those are two distinct paths. You either walk one or the other. You cannot walk one and experience the other. So check in and ask yourself, what if it doesn't work? So my question for you is, and this is how I want you to think about pretty much everything that you have that has an investment of time, energy, or money associated to it. What's the cost of not doing it? So for instance, if you knew how to launch your program, let's just use this webinar as an example. And I apologize for the sirens that are in the background. My office sits on the busiest street intersection of my community, and all the sirens go through here. So if you knew how to launch a program, and if you got out of your way and you got into action and you got the feedback and you did the in-game adjustments, and then you launched the program, and then you launched another one a few months later, and then you launched another one a few months later, like, what could you ultimately create financially? How much money could you be making on a monthly basis, let's say, if you were to get out of your way and get these systems, funnels, campaigns, launches in motion? How much money do you think you could generate? And this is totally up to you. Some of you might go, I can make $10,000 a month. Great. Some of you might go, I think I can make $300 a month. Great. Whatever you think you could make per month, I want you to think about that number. And I'd actually invite you to write that number down. Whatever that number is, write that number down. That's the number that you are spending every month by not getting your dreams in motion. So yeah, this program costs $1,500. Somebody like, I don't have $1,500, really? But if your number that you wrote down is $1,000, then in 2 months' time, you've wasted $2,000. How long are you going to keep not investing $1,500 or $500 or $100 or $10,000? It doesn't matter the dollar amount, right? And again, I'm not trying to talk you into this mastermind. I want you to think like an entrepreneur if you're serious about building your business. You've got to look at your opportunity cost and how much money are you literally paying or wasting every single month by not getting these things in motion. So a lot of people don't like to hire a private coach because the coach costs $10,000 or $15,000 or $5,000. Well, I don't have $10,000. Okay, great. If you're wasting $2,000 a month by not investing $10,000, then you better clear everything you need to clear inside of these, next 5 months. Otherwise, That's not a wise decision. I remember the first time that I was exposed to a private coach, he had a price of $10,000. And I thought, I don't have $10,000. And then I went back to his event the next year. And I had a painful conversation with myself around exactly what I'm talking to you about right now. I thought, what if I would have hired him last year? I didn't have $10,000 back then, or I did, actually, I did, or at least Visa and MasterCard did on my behalf. I didn't have the cash, but what if I would have hired him at $10,000 last year? Where would I be now? Could I be in a situation right now where $10,000 doesn't mean anything because I'm now making $100,000 a year, or 150 or 200 or whatever? And that's when I really got the value of investing in a coach and the opportunity cost. And so I went up to him and I said, okay, I'm ready to pay you $10,000. You know what he said? Nope, I don't have that program anymore. That program now costs 20 grand. And then I paid him 20 grand. But you know what? We made over $300,000 in those first 18 months. So would I invest $20,000 to make 302 every single day? I would, right? So there's variation. I'm not trying to say that you are wasting $500, $5,000, $10,000. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. But whatever it is that you could be earning if you get out of your way, whether it's a mental block or an intellectual block, a tactical thing, whatever it is, whatever that is that's blocking you from making that money, every month you don't handle that problem, you just spent that money. And if you think of it like you're actually paying that money, I bet you have more leverage to do whatever it is you've got to do in order to make this work for you. All right, so let me dive in. I haven't paid any attention, sorry, I haven't paid any attention, much attention at least, to my messages. So let's see, somebody's talking about sound. If you have any questions about this, the program or about the content, then go ahead and type them in, even if you typed them in before, because I haven't been paying attention to the questions. So they're lost way up top. So go ahead and type them in. Terry says, can you see my comments? Yes, I can see your comments, right? I came back on this part. It must be meant. Perfect. Okay, Terry. So it looks like you're asking about payment information. Yes, you can do what you're asking for. You can just handle that on the website. For those of you that are going to invest in the program, you go to the website, there's a shopping cart there, and you can decide if you want to do the upfront pay in full. And if you do the pay in full, you get the extra additional hour one-on-one time with Ola and I. If you don't want to do that, then you can just choose one of the other payment options. So all of that is on the page. Okay, this is good. Somebody says, step 5 makes my head spin. It's where I see and feel overwhelmed and the doors open to, I don't know if I can do this. The rest of the steps, including step 6, sales, I'm good. That's interesting that you're good with step 6, sales. But number 5 is where you're challenged. So I don't even remember which one, which one number 5 is right now. Let me open that up. Step number 5, marketing funnel. Yeah, there's a lot of how-to stuff in there, honestly, you know, and you gotta get the stuff built. Now that doesn't mean that you have to build it on your own, but you have to have the stuff built. Otherwise, you just can't, you can't operate. Marcus got the time wrong. That's all right, man. You show up an hour into my webinars and you still got at least an hour to go generally. Jay, can you talk a little bit about the format for the group coaching? Yeah, we're going to do, great question. We're going to do video conferencing as a group. So you can see us. Ideally, we'd like to see you as well, but you don't necessarily have to have your video on. But there's more intimacy with that. So we're going to do video group conferencing every other week. And the sessions will be generally roughly an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more. And, there's going to be content that we teach that we pace you through. There's going to be homework that you do in between, and you've got to be willing to put in some effort, right? I mean, this is your business here. This is your purpose. And if your purpose is not, important enough for you to put some effort into it, then, don't do the mastermind, right? But don't do anything, like don't expect anything out of anything else either, right? You got to put some effort into it. So there's going to be homework in between, and there's going to be, we're going to pace you through some things. We're going to connect with you, in between the sessions as well. We're going to put a lot into this program. Honestly, it's a low dollar amount of investment in terms of what we are going to put into this program, but it's the first kind of program that we've done. And there are things that we want to make sure work in this structure, obviously. And we, to be totally transparent, we want to create some success stories out of some of you. So that's one of our angles for doing the program like this. But it's going to be intimate video conferencing and Facebook page and in between support. So hopefully that makes sense. Yes, the sessions will be recorded, and you can listen to the sessions whenever. There'll be video recordings, I believe. At the very least, there will be audio recordings. You don't necessarily need to see our face, but there will be recordings. And if we're sharing slides and things like that, all of that will get recorded. So you can watch it on your own time. Which day of the week will the sessions be held? We are primarily doing them on Fridays. That's what we have committed to right now. But like with what we were talking about in the launch, we're also committed to pivoting if that date doesn't work. And so, if that particular date doesn't work for everybody, then we can look at doing some other dates as well. But right now, we've just got them, just to put an appointment on the calendar. We've got them started out on Fridays, starting on the 9th, and Friday mornings generally. So somebody says, thank you very much. I think I'm not ready yet to go further, but I'm in the way. You know what? That's great awareness. And I'm happy that you have the awareness that you're not ready to go forward. My advice to you is identify whatever it is that's in your way and, get support. I mean, one of the things that we offer as a company as well is private coaching. So you can jump on with one of my coaches and do a consultation, and we can help you identify what it is that's in your way. If it's some kind of internal block, or, you got writer's block, if you're trying to write a book or whatever that is, we can support you with that as well. All right, so I don't see any more questions about the program. So if you do have any more, go ahead and ask it now. Somebody's asking for Mondays. You know what? We do our best to accommodate our seeker. So that's all that I can promise right now. But realize, most of the work is going to be done outside of the calls, right? And we'll do everything we can to make sure that you get value and that you get some live attention. If somebody wants to do this and can't make any of the calls that are scheduled, as scheduled, then we'll figure it out somehow to give you value. Cool. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that comment. All right, everyone. Well, hopefully this has been valuable for you. I don't even know what time it is because I'm on Facebook Live over here and I can't see the time. and I am on the webinar here, and I also cannot see the time. So hopefully it's been valuable for you. If you're going to join us going forward, then fantastic. We look forward to supporting you in launching your next program or your first program, whatever that looks like. And if you're not moving forward with us, if this is, where our relationship ends for now, then, stay connected however you can, and we'll support you however we can. So with that, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you on social media. I'll see you on Facebook. We'll shoot you out some videos to support you in growing your skill set as a coach, as well as continuing to build the tools that you need to create a business that's fulfilling and powerful and lucrative and exciting for you. So with that, everyone, have a great rest of the evening. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.